Senator Alexander.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Hayden, welcome. It's good to see you. Thank you for the terrific events that you have for members of Congress with prominent writers of American history. Thank you for the cultural diversity you've shown by hiring the exhibit director from the Country Music Hall of Fame to help you with your new presentation. We think that's a smart thing to do, and I appreciated your efforts to expand the Alex Haley collection, and maybe I'll have more time to talk with you about that in a minute. But I want to talk with you for a moment about the Music Modernization Act. There are very few pieces of legislation in the United States Senate that get 85 co-sponsors, but it did. It was a complicated bill, it has broad support. The goal was to make it possible, among other things, for songwriters in this internet age to be paid for their work and to be paid a fair market value. Part of that, from some of the implementation for that's under your supervision. What can you tell me about your timeline for the implementation of the Music Modernization Act?
Thank you for that, because the office, the Copyright Office, is committed to an open and transparent designation process, and the acting register, Karen Temple, will recommend entities to be designated by July 8th, 2019. The office opened and issued a notice of inquiry regarding the designation of mechanical licensing collective and a digital licensee coordinator. And so, in looking at what will happen with the Music Modernization Act, there have been big changes to the law, and the office is continually updating its website to inform the public of the changes and to issue notice of the implementation dates.
Good, thank you. Now, let me ask you a more specific question, sort of the genius of the act, if I may say it that way, because it brought together the streaming companies and the music publishers and the songwriters, was this new entity that will have the job of issuing a blanket license for a song, and they go finding the songwriter and make sure that the songwriter gets paid. And streaming companies like it because that means they don't have to look around for some songwriter or the songwriter's descendant and then get sued if they don't find that person. And the songwriters like it because the entity's job is to find the songwriter and pay the songwriter. So the language of the law talked about the entity having strong support from songwriters and music publishers, endorsed by and enjoy substantial support from musical work, copyright owners, etc. And then the Copyright Office interpreted this to mean that relevant support should come from the parties who have a relevant ownership interest in the copyright to musical works, in contrast to parties who do not possess any ownership interest in the musical work, but rather the ability to administer the work. So in your opinion, what kind of support from songwriters and publishers should this entity have? I'm not asking you to pick what the entity should be at this point, but how are you going to assess whether the entity that's chosen has the appropriate amount of support from songwriters and publishers?
Senator, in my role as librarian, I am definitely responsible for making sure that the office carries out its responsibilities efficiently and effectively. And in terms of giving advice or making policy recommendations, I rely on the Register of Copyright. And so if you would like some more detail about the specifics of the operation of an execution.
Well, really, I just wondered what she meant, how she understands the idea of, the quote, support by songwriters and music publishers as you select this entity.
Now, Ms. Temple is here, and if you would like her to address it now or record.
It's up to the chairman.
That would be absolutely fine.
Ms. Temple could come up. And I just want to take this opportunity to commend her for her management of the Copyright Office in an acting capacity. She has worked closely with the Chief Information Officer on the copyright monetization. She's worked closely with me to make sure that we are having the best copyright process and during this time. So if Ms. Temple could come up, it would be
I think
very
this would be a good time to pursue this topic, so that would be
Ms.
fine.
Temple?
Ms. Temple, if you'd come up.
And once again, being in an acting position is not always easy, and she has done a commendable job.
Hello, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. As you know, we did issue a notice within the Federal Register on the designation of the MLC, the Music Licensing Collective. One of the questions that we did ask the parties who are going to be submitting to be designated as the MLC is to demonstrate to us how they do have the support of the songwriting community. So we will take that information in once they do provide it to us to assess and ensure that they do meet the statutory requirements in terms of having that support of the songwriting community.
Good. I've heard no complaints. I just want to underscore the importance of that, because the entity, the idea was to have an entity that knew what it was doing, because it had people, had the support of people whom it was serving. So as long as you understand the importance of that to those who passed the law, I think that's really, Mr. Chairman, all I wanted to emphasize.
And I would just add that, we do really understand the importance. We are committed to a transparent and open process in terms of the designation. Once we receive the comments in from the various parties that might be interested in being designated, that information will be available through the Federal Register, so everyone will be able to see those comments and will be able to assess on their own what we will be assessing in terms of making that designation as well.
Mr. Chairman, in conclusion, the importance of this was over the last few years, what has happened is now probably 60% of the revenues in the music business are now from online sales. So, and the mechanism for finding the songwriters and paying them a fair market value was about as old as the player piano. So this was a very complex and important law, and it's one I would like to keep my eye on. I appreciate the effort that you and Dr. Hayden are making to give it your full attention. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the extra time.
Thank you, Senator.